I'm Abigail Wilson, 32, and for my entire life, I've been labeled the family disappointment. While my siblings collected accolades, I collected criticism. What my family doesn't know is that I secretly built a multi-million-dollar company. At our upcoming reunion, my sister will mock my pathetic life choices, not realizing she has an interview at my company on Monday. The family Butler knows my secret, though. If you're watching this, drop a comment telling me where you're from, hit that like button, and subscribe to see how I finally showed my family who's really boss. Growing up in the Wilson family meant living under constant pressure to excel. Our sprawling estate in Connecticut housed generations of overachievers, doctors, lawyers, business tycoons, their portraits lining the mahogany-paneled hallways like silent judges of each new generation. My parents, Morgan and Richard Wilson, weren't just wealthy. They were obsessed with status, achievements, and maintaining the family's sterling reputation in high society. My mother, Morgan, with her perfectly styled blonde hair and country club membership, measured success in social connections and charitable board positions. My father, Richard, stern and unyielding, counted success only in dollars and prestigious titles. Between them, they created an atmosphere where nothing less than excellence was acceptable. Then there were my siblings, the golden children. My sister Vanessa, 2 years older, was everything I wasn't. She graduated valedictorian, captained 3 varsity sports teams, and won a scholarship to Yale. Beautiful, poised, and naturally charismatic, Vanessa collected academic honors and social popularity with effortless grace. She studied business and economics, following our father's footsteps exactly as expected. My brother Brandon, 4 years older, was the business prodigy. By 25, he was already managing a division of our father's company. Tall, confident, and ambitious, Brandon embodied everything our father valued. His office walls displayed framed magazine features celebrating his business acumen, and family dinners often became Brandon's personal stage to discuss his latest achievements. And then there was me, Abigail. From childhood, I showed different interests. While Vanessa and Brandon competed in debate tournaments, I lost myself in art and technology. I was quiet, thoughtful, and creative. Traits the Wilson family regarded with suspicion at best and disappointment at worst. Abigail, why can't you apply yourself like your sister? Became my mother's constant refrain throughout my childhood. My father was more direct. At this rate, you'll never amount to anything substantial. I remember my 16th birthday dinner vividly. While the family gathered around our ornate dining table, my father announced Brandon's promotion and Vanessa's internship at a prestigious financial firm. When it came time to acknowledge my birthday, my father merely sighed and said, "Perhaps this year, Abigail will find some direction." My grades weren't bad. They just weren't exceptional by Wilson standards. My SAT scores were good enough for several fine colleges, just not Ivy League. In the Wilson household, this qualified as failure. The summer before college brought the annual Wilson family reunion, an elaborate garden party where extended family gathered to compare achievements. Cousin Heather had published her second book. Uncle Gerald had been appointed to a prestigious hospital board. And I had nothing significant to report. "Still drawing those little pictures?" my Aunt Diana asked, her voice dripping with condescension. "It's good to have hobbies, I suppose." That evening, I overheard my mother in the kitchen, voice strained with emotion. I don't know what went wrong with Abigail. We gave her every advantage. College brought temporary relief. I attended a respected state university instead of Yale or Harvard, another disappointment to add to my growing collection. But away from my family's constant scrutiny, I discovered something surprising. I was actually quite talented and intelligent when not paralyzed by their expectations. I double majored in computer science and business, discovering a natural aptitude for both. I developed software applications in my spare time, one of which gained modest attention from a tech blog. For the first time, I felt a glimmer of confidence in my abilities. When I graduated, my family attended out of obligation. During the celebration dinner, Vanessa announced her promotion at a top investment firm. Brandon shared news of his successful acquisition of a rival company. When attention reluctantly turned to me, my father asked, "So, what's the plan now, Abigail?" "Graduate school, I hope." "I'm going to start my own company," I replied quietly. The table fell silent before erupting in poorly concealed laughter. "Oh, sweetie," my mother said, patting my hand. "Perhaps start with something more realistic for someone with your qualifications." That night, I made two decisions that would change everything. First, I would build a company so successful it would be impossible to ignore. Second, I would do it completely in secret, using only my initials professionally to conceal my identity. Let the Wilsons continue believing I was a disappointment for now. I packed my belongings, declined the trust fund that came with strings attached, and moved to Chicago. The distance from Connecticut felt necessary for my reinvention. I severed daily contact with my family, agreeing only to attend the obligatory annual family reunion to keep appearances. For the next several years, as far as my family knew, I was working meaningless jobs and finding myself, further evidence of my inability to succeed in the Wilson tradition. In reality, I was laying the groundwork for something extraordinary, something that would eventually force them to see me clearly for the first time. My first apartment in Chicago was a far cry from the luxury I'd grown up with, a studio walk-up with unreliable heating and a persistent smell of the Indian restaurant below. I took 3 jobs simultaneously: barista in the morning, administrative assistant during the day, and coding websites at night. Every dollar went toward night classes in advanced business management and software development. The exhaustion was constant, but for the first time, I felt the exhilaration of working toward my own goals rather than failing to meet someone else's expectations. Without the crushing weight of my family's disappointment, my mind flourished with ideas and possibilities. 6 months into my Chicago life, I met Catherine Ross, a visiting professor at my night program. In her 50s with silver-streaked black hair and incisive intelligence, Catherine recognized something in me that my family never had: genuine potential. "Your project proposal is the most innovative I've seen in years," she told me after class one evening. "Have you considered seeking investment?" Under Catherine's mentorship, I refined my business plan and developed a prototype for my software, an artificial intelligence platform that could revolutionize supply chain management across industries. Catherine introduced me to potential investors, coaching me through pitches and negotiations. "Use AW as your professional name," she suggested. "Let your work speak for itself, without gender or family preconceptions." Following her advice, I became AW in all business dealings. My first investment came from a small venture capital firm, $250,000 to develop my software into a marketable product. I named my company Wilson Innovations, partly as a private joke. If I succeeded, the Wilson name would indeed become associated with innovation, just not in the way my family expected. I worked 18-hour days, building my team carefully. My first hire was Lucas Chun, a brilliant programmer I'd met in my classes. Then came Sophia Martinez, a marketing strategist who believed in my vision. We operated from a small office above a deli, our equipment purchased secondhand, our determination first-rate. The launch of our first product exceeded our modest expectations, generating enough revenue to attract additional investment. I lived simply, pouring profits back into the company. While my family assumed I was barely scraping by, Wilson Innovations grew steadily, adding clients and staff. 3 years after that difficult graduation dinner, Wilson Innovations released our flagship product, an AI-driven supply chain optimization platform that reduced costs by an average of 30% while increasing efficiency. Major corporations took notice. Orders flowed in. Our staff expanded to 30, then 50, then over 100. I maintained my privacy fiercely. In an industry dominated by celebrity CEOs, AW became known as the reclusive genius behind Wilson Innovations. I conducted meetings virtually when possible and delegated public appearances to my chief operating officer. The few photos of me in company materials were carefully angled to be unrecognizable to casual observers. By year 5, Wilson Innovations had become a major player in the tech industry. Our headquarters occupied 3 floors of a downtown Chicago building. Our client list included Fortune 500 companies across 4 continents. And still, my family knew nothing. During this period, I learned through business channels that my father's company was struggling. The economic downturn had hit them hard, and Richard Wilson's refusal to embrace new technologies had left them vulnerable to more innovative competitors. When one of his subsidiary companies went up for sale, I purchased it through a holding company, becoming my father's competitor without his knowledge. As Wilson Innovations continued its meteoric rise, I expanded our operations. We acquired smaller tech companies with complementary products. We opened offices in San Francisco, Austin, and Boston. At 30, I was worth over $100 million on paper, though I still lived relatively modestly compared to my wealth. Our breakthrough moment came when we secured a contract with the federal government to optimize their procurement systems. Suddenly, AW and Wilson Innovations were featured in major business publications. The most innovative company in America, declared Forbes. AW, the mysterious tech genius transforming industry, headlined Business Insider. I bought the iconic Hartwell Building in downtown Chicago for our new headquarters, 30 floors of gleaming steel and glass. My personal office on the top floor offered panoramic views of Lake Michigan. I finally purchased a luxury apartment and allowed myself some of the comforts my success could afford. Through it all, I maintained my annual appearance at the Wilson family reunion, where I continued to be treated as the underachieving daughter. I drove a modest car to these events, wore simple clothes, and allowed them to believe I was working some computer job that barely paid the bills. Still chasing that entrepreneur dream? My brother Brandon would ask with a smirk. In a way, I'd reply truthfully. My executive assistant Jordan became my confidant, one of the few people who knew both Abigail Wilson and AW were the same person. Walter Davis, our family's longtime butler who had always shown me kindness during my childhood, also discovered my secret when he recognized me in a partially obscured photo accompanying a Wall Street Journal article. He reached out via email, and I swore him to secrecy, grateful for his quiet support over the years. By the time I turned 32, Wilson Innovations employed over 500 people and was valued at $2.3 billion. I had built a loyal executive team who respected my leadership style, collaborative, innovative, and decisive. Unlike my father's authoritarian approach, I valued diverse perspectives and created a company culture that nurtured creativity. And still, every Wilson family gathering, I played the role of disappointing daughter, listening to my siblings' achievements and my parents' thinly veiled concerns about my future. The contrast between my two lives couldn't have been more stark: corporate titan by day, family disappointment by night. As another annual reunion approached, I had no idea that the carefully separated worlds I'd maintained for years were about to spectacularly collide. The embossed invitation arrived at my Chicago apartment on a Tuesday morning in early June. The Wilson family cordially invites you to our annual family reunion, it announced in elegant script. Same event, same location, same expectations of disappointment. I traced my finger over the raised lettering, contemplating whether this would be the year. I finally declined. Jordan found me staring at the invitation when she arrived with my morning briefing documents. "Another fun-filled weekend with the charming Wilsons?" she asked, setting down my coffee. "I'm considering skipping it this year," I replied, tossing the invitation onto my kitchen counter. "We have the Singapore expansion to focus on." "You say that every year," Jordan reminded me, "and every year you go." She was right. Despite the emotional toll, I attended each reunion like a ritual of self-flagellation. Perhaps some part of me still sought approval, or maybe I simply refused to give them the satisfaction of my complete absence. That afternoon, my cousin Blake called. We weren't close, but he occasionally reached out when family gossip was too juicy to contain. "You're coming to the reunion, right?" he asked without preamble. "Vanessa has some big announcement. Apparently, she's interviewing for some executive position at a major tech company. Uncle Richard is practically bursting with pride." I felt a flicker of curiosity. Did she mention which company? Someplace with initials? AW something? Supposed to be the hottest firm in the country right now. Aunt Morgan's already telling everyone Vanessa's practically guaranteed the position. My stomach dropped. AW Corporation, the public-facing entity of Wilson Innovations. We were indeed conducting executive interviews next week. Could it possibly be? Thanks for the heads up, I told Blake, my mind racing. I'll be there. After hanging up, I immediately called my HR director, Rachel, who's scheduled for the VP of Strategic Partnerships interviews next week. She read through several names before pausing. Vanessa Wilson. Impressive resume. Harvard MBA. Experience at Goldman Sachs and Brentworth Consulting. My sister was interviewing at my company. The universe apparently had a sense of humor after all. The reunion was 3 days away. For the first time, I approached it with strategic preparation rather than resignation. I selected my outfit carefully, an understated but impeccably tailored navy dress from a boutique designer, expensive but not ostentatious. I would wear minimal jewelry, just my grandmother's simple pearl earrings. The goal was to look successful enough to maintain my self-respect, but not so successful as to raise questions. I arranged to arrive in a modest rental car rather than my usual luxury vehicle. I booked a room at the nearby Westfield Hotel rather than staying at the family estate, a small act of self-preservation I'd begun implementing years ago. The morning of the reunion, I woke early, reviewing company documents for several hours before beginning my preparation. As I applied light makeup, I rehearsed the vague, unmemorable responses I'd give to inevitable questions about my career. I'd perfected the art of being forgettable at these gatherings, present enough to avoid comment, invisible enough to avoid scrutiny. The 3-hour drive to Connecticut gave me time to mentally prepare. The family estate came into view as I rounded the familiar curve of the private road, a sprawling colonial mansion set on 40 acres of manicured grounds. As a child, I'd found it impressive. Now, after creating my own wealth, I saw it differently, beautiful but cold, like the family it housed. I parked among the luxury vehicles already lining the circular driveway. Taking a deep breath, I collected my overnight bag and gift basket, a selection of local Chicago specialties I'd brought as my contribution. Walter opened the door before I could ring the bell. Now in his 60s with silver hair and the same kind eyes I remembered from childhood, he greeted me with a warm smile that contained our shared secret. "Miss Abigail, welcome home," he said, taking my bag. Then, barely audible, he added, "It's good to see you, boss." The subtle acknowledgement of my true identity steadied me as I stepped into the foyer. The house smelled the same, lemon polish and fresh flowers, but I noticed subtle changes. The antique vase that had occupied the entryway table was missing, replaced by a lesser piece. The original Monet that had hung in the main hall had been replaced by another painting from the family collection. Interesting. These weren't design choices, but downgrades, signs of financial strain my parents would never openly acknowledge. My mother Morgan appeared, champagne flute in hand. "Abigail, darling, you've arrived." Her kiss barely grazed my cheek. "Everyone's on the terrace. Vanessa and Brandon are already regaling the family with their latest triumphs." Her emphasis on their spoke volumes about her expectations for my contributions to the conversation. The terrace was crowded with relatives when I emerged. Uncle Gerald and Aunt Patricia, cousins Taylor and Harper with their spouses, my father's business associates, and their families. My father stood with Brandon near the bar, deep in conversation with his longtime friend Senator Mitchell. Vanessa held court near the Rose Garden, surrounded by admiring relatives. Her husband Derek, an investment banker with political ambitions, stood beside her, his hand possessively on her lower back. I accepted a glass of champagne from a server and circulated, exchanging pleasantries and deflecting questions. "Still in Chicago? Still working with computers?" I nodded and smiled, offering just enough information to satisfy minimal politeness. As I passed the library windows, I overheard my father's voice, tense and low. "The bank won't extend the line of credit. If the Westfield deal falls through, we'll have to consider more drastic options." Another male voice, my father's CFO Douglas, responded, "The market's changing too quickly, Richard. These newer companies with their technology advantages are undercutting us, at every turn. That damned AW Corporation, my father spat, swooped in and took the Nakamura account right from under us. 30 years of business gone overnight because of some tech gimmick. I moved away before they could notice me, processing this new information. My company had indeed recently secured the Nakamura contract, a Japanese manufacturing giant that had been my father's client for decades. I hadn't realized the account had previously belonged to Wilson Enterprises. Dinner would be served soon, and with it, the traditional family inquisition. For the first time, I felt something beyond my usual dread, a strange anticipation. In less than 48 hours, my sister would walk into my office, expecting an interview. The family disappointment would be revealed as the CEO she desperately wanted to impress. The question now was whether to maintain my secret through this reunion or finally let the truth emerge. As Walter caught my eye across the terrace and gave me a subtle nod of encouragement, I made my decision. One more night as the family disappointment. On Monday, everything would change. The Wilson annual reunion dinner was a production worthy of a Broadway show. 36 relatives seated at the extended dining table, bone china and sterling silver gleaming under the crystal chandelier, flower arrangements sculpted to perfection. Walter and 2 additional servers moved silently around the table, filling wine glasses and delivering each course with choreographed precision. I was seated between Cousin Harper's husband Troy, who worked in commercial real estate and had never once remembered my name in 5 years of marriage into the family, and Aunt Patricia, who specialized in backhanded compliments. "Abigail, that dress is quite nice," she commented as we were served the first course. So sensible to invest in quality basics when one has limited resources. I smiled and thanked her, resisting the urge to mention that the basic dress had cost more than her ostentatious diamond bracelet. My father Richard commanded the head of the table, my mother Morgan at the opposite end. As tradition dictated, dinner conversation followed a predictable pattern. Each family member would share their recent accomplishments, moving clockwise around the table, with my parents offering commentary throughout. Uncle Gerald described his hospital's new cardiac wing, named in his honor. Cousin Taylor had made partner at her law firm. Cousin Blake had completed his second Ironman triathlon. The litany of achievements continued, met with appropriate murmurs of approval and follow-up questions. Brandon, seated at my father's right hand, detailed his recent business acquisition. The Henderson Group had been struggling since the recession, but their client portfolio is valuable. We acquired them for 20% below market value. My father beamed. Strategic thinking, son. That's the Wilson way. As the servers cleared the main course, all attention shifted to Vanessa, who straightened in her chair with practiced poise. "I have some exciting news," she announced, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. "I've been invited to interview for Vice President of Strategic Partnerships at AW Corporation." A collective murmur of appreciation rippled through the family. AW Corporation had become a household name, even among those who didn't follow business news closely. "AW," my father repeated, his tone suggesting he was impressed despite himself. "They've become quite the force in the industry. Took the Nakamura account from us last quarter." He didn't mention the financial strain this had caused, which I'd overheard earlier. "What do we know about this mysterious AW person?" asked Uncle Gerald. "I read something about them being rather reclusive." "A brilliant strategist, apparently," Vanessa replied. "The interview is on Monday. The position reports directly to the CEO." "Well, they'd be lucky to have you," my mother declared. "A Wilson in their executive suite would certainly elevate their operation." The conversation continued around AW Corporation, its meteoric rise, its innovative approaches, its desirability as an employer. I sipped my wine and listened, a surreal feeling washing over me as my family discussed my company without the slightest inkling of my connection to it. Finally, inevitably, the spotlight shifted to me. "And what about you, Abigail?" my father asked, his tone already suggesting he expected nothing of interest. "Anything new in Chicago?" Before I could formulate my deliberately vague response, Vanessa interjected with a laugh. "Still working that little computer job, Abby? What is it you actually do again?" Something with websites. Software development. I replied simply. Right. Vanessa nodded dismissively. You know, AW. Corporation has an entire department for people with your skill set. Entry-level positions, but still, might be worth looking into. I could put in a word after I'm hired. Several relatives chuckled. Brandon smirked. Assuming they hire you first, Ness. Oh, they will, she replied confidently. The recruiter practically guaranteed it. Said my background was exactly what they're looking for. She turned to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. So, anything exciting happening in your life, Abby? Still a nobody in the big city. The table fell awkwardly silent. Even for the Wilsons, the comment crossed a line into overt cruelty. My mother cleared her throat. Vanessa, really. But Vanessa continued, warming to her subject. I'm just concerned about Abigail. 32 and still drifting. No career advancement, no relationship, no real achievements to speak of. It must be difficult living in the shadow of success. I met her gaze steadily. I manage. My father sighed heavily. You know, Abigail, it's not too late to join the family business. We could find something suitable for your capabilities. I've heard this AW person is a woman, Aunt Patricia interjected, apparently attempting to change the subject. Though no one seems to have met her in person. A woman, my father scoffed. I doubt it. The strategic moves that company has made indicate a male mind. Women simply don't think that aggressively in business. I nearly choked on my wine. If it is a woman, Brandon added, she's probably just a figurehead. There's likely a team of men actually running things. I excused myself to the restroom, needing a moment to process the layers of irony in the conversation. In the hallway, Walter appeared silently at my side. Are you all right, Miss Abigail? He asked quietly.
I'm fine, Walter.
Just the usual family warmth. His eyes crinkled with understanding. If I may say so, miss, you've accomplished more than all of them combined. Some people can only see what they expect to see. I squeezed his arm gratefully. Thank you, Walter. That means more than you know. When I returned to the table, dessert was being served, my mother's traditional lemon tart with fresh berries. The conversation had moved on to Cousin Taylor's children and their private school achievements. I ate silently, letting the familiar pattern of exclusion and condescension wash over me. For years, these dinners had left me feeling diminished and worthless. Tonight, knowing what awaited Vanessa on Monday morning, I felt something entirely different, a calm certainty that justice sometimes arrives in unexpected packages. As coffee was served, my father raised his glass in a toast. To the continued success of the Wilson family, he proclaimed, and to Vanessa's certain triumph at AW Corporation. Glasses clinked around the table. I raised mine silently, catching Walter's eye across the room. He gave me the slightest wink as he poured coffee for my mother. For the first time in my adult life, I was looking forward to Monday morning. Monday morning at Wilson Innovations headquarters began like any other. I arrived at 7 a.m., taking my private elevator to the 30th floor. The early sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the minimalist design of my executive suite. My office featured clean lines, state-of-the-art technology subtly integrated into classic architecture, and a spectacular view of Lake Michigan. Jordan arrived precisely at 7:15, carrying my schedule and a latte from the artisanal coffee shop in the lobby. Executive interviews begin at 10, she reminded me, sliding the schedule across my desk. 3 candidates for VP of Strategic Partnerships. Each interview is scheduled for 45 minutes, with 15-minute breaks between. Any standouts in the candidate pool? I asked, though I already knew the answer. The committee was impressed with all 3, but particularly highlighted Vanessa Wilson from Brentworth Consulting. Rachel says her credentials are impeccable. I nodded, maintaining a neutral expression. I'll review their files before the interviews. Any other pressing matters this morning? We spent the next hour discussing quarterly projections and the upcoming board meeting. At 9 a.m., my executive team gathered for our weekly strategy session. Chief Technology Officer Lucas Chun presented updates on our latest software developments. Chief Marketing Officer Sofia Martinez outlined the marketing campaign for our newest product launch. Chief Financial Officer Marcus Bennett reviewed our financial position, which remained exceptionally strong. Throughout the meeting, I found my thoughts drifting to Vanessa's upcoming interview. My team noticed my unusual distraction. "Everything all right, Abigail?" Lucas asked as the meeting concluded. "You seem preoccupied." "Just thinking about the VP interviews," I replied truthfully. "I've decided to conduct the final one personally." This was a departure from our usual process. Typically, I only met with candidates after they'd been vetted through multiple rounds with the executive team. "Any particular reason?" Sophia asked curiously. "Call it CEO's intuition," I answered. "Sometimes it's good to be directly involved in key hires." At 9:45, I reviewed the candidates' resumes. Vanessa's was indeed impressive on paper: Harvard MBA, strategic roles at top firms, glowing recommendations. Nothing in her application materials mentioned our shared last name or family connection, which didn't surprise me. Vanessa had always preferred to be judged on her own merits rather than family connections, at least professionally. The first two interviews proceeded normally, conducted by my executive team in the conference room down the hall. From my office, I could see the candidates arrive and depart: a woman in her 40s with a confident stride, a man in his 30s who gestured expressively as he spoke with Rachel from HR. At 11:45, Jordan buzzed my intercom. "Vanessa Wilson has arrived for her interview. Have the team direct her to my office after their portion of the interview," I instructed. "And Jordan, please make sure Walter is available to bring refreshments around 12:30. Walter had taken a part-time position at Wilson Innovations 2 years earlier, after semi-retiring from my parents' household staff. He worked 3 days a week, primarily managing our executive dining services. His presence today was no coincidence. Through the glass walls of the conference room, I watched Vanessa shake hands with my executive team. Even from a distance, her poise was evident. She wore a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, her dark hair arranged in a sleek chignon. She looked exactly like the type of polished executive AW Corporation would hire, which, ironically, we often did. For 45 minutes, I reviewed reports while occasionally glancing toward the conference room. The interview appeared to be going well. Vanessa smiled at appropriate moments, leaned forward with interest, and gesticulated with controlled enthusiasm when making a point. At 12:45, Rachel escorted Vanessa from the conference room. Through the glass walls of my office, I could see Vanessa's confident smile as they approached. I turned my chair toward the window, facing the lake, my back to the door. "Ms. Wilson," Rachel said as they entered, "I'd like to introduce you to our founder and CEO." I swiveled my chair slowly, savoring the moment of recognition that was about to occur. Vanessa's expression transformed from professional confidence to utter shock in the span of a heartbeat. Her mouth opened slightly, her carefully composed facade crumbling as she stared at me sitting behind the imposing desk, the AW Corporation logo displayed prominently on the wall behind me. "Abigail," she finally managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you, Rachel," I said calmly. "I'll take it from here." Rachel nodded and exited, closing the door behind her, leaving Vanessa and me alone in the sudden silence. "Please have a seat," I gestured to the chair across from my desk. Vanessa remained frozen for several seconds before mechanically moving to the chair. Her eyes darted around my office, taking in the obvious symbols of power and success, the awards lining the credenza, the signed photograph of me with the governor, the scale model of our new research facility breaking ground in Austin. Your AW?" she finally asked, her voice uncharacteristically uncertain. "Abigail Wilson," I confirmed. AW seemed simpler for business purposes. "But how? When?" She shook her head as if trying to clear a hallucination. "You work with computers. You're nobody." I smiled slightly. "Evidently not." Vanessa's shock was beginning to transform into something else, a calculation I could almost see working behind her eyes. Always the strategist, my sister was already figuring out how to adapt to this unexpected situation. "This is Quite a surprise, she said, attempting to regain her composure. I had no idea you'd build all this. Why didn't you ever say anything? Would anyone have believed me? I asked simply. The question hung in the air between us, its answer obvious to us both. Well, she said, straightening her posture and adopting a bright tone, this is wonderful. Family working together. Mom and Dad will be thrilled. Let's discuss your interview. I redirected, opening her file. Your qualifications are certainly strong. Harvard MBA, experience at Goldman Sachs, leadership role at Brentworth Consulting. Impressive trajectory. Thank you, Vanessa replied, seemingly grateful for the return to professional territory. I've always been driven to excel. Indeed. Your references speak highly of your strategic thinking and leadership abilities. I flipped through her file. Though I notice your tenure at each position has been relatively brief. 2 years at Goldman, 18 months at Brentworth. Any particular reason? Vanessa shifted slightly. I believe in continuing to challenge myself. When I've mastered one role, I seek greater opportunities. I nodded. And what attracted you to AW Corporation specifically? She launched into a clearly rehearsed answer about our innovative approach, market dominance, and corporate culture. As she spoke, I observed her carefully. The sister who had dismissed me countless times now eagerly selling herself to me. Your brother-in-law works in investment banking, correct? I asked when she finished. Confusion flickered across her face. Yes, Derek is at Morgan Stanley. How did you know that? I make it my business to know everything about potential executives, I replied smoothly. Family dynamics can impact professional performance. A knock at the door interrupted us. Walter entered with a silver tray bearing a carafe of water and 2 crystal glasses. Refreshments, Ms. Wilson, he said formally. Vanessa glanced up, then did a double-take as she recognized our family butler. Walter, she exclaimed. What are you doing here? Walter oversees our executive dining services, I explained. He's been with us for 2 years now. Thank you, Walter, I added. That will be all for now. Walter nodded respectfully. Of course, boss. The word hung in the air as he exited. Boss. Not Ms. Wilson or ma'am, but boss. A clear acknowledgement of our respective positions. Vanessa's face had paled considerably. The full reality of the situation seemed to finally hit her. Her younger sister, the family disappointment, was not just successful but powerful. Powerful enough to employ the family butler. Powerful enough to consider hiring her. How long have you? She gestured vaguely around the office. I founded the company 8 years ago, I replied. Shortly after that family dinner where you suggested I find a nice administrative position somewhere. Recognition flashed in her eyes. Abigail, about last night, and well, all the things I might have said over the years, you have to understand, I never meant to. I raised a hand to stop her. This isn't a personal conversation, Ms. Wilson. This is a job interview. Let's keep it professional. The use of her formal name wasn't lost on Vanessa. Her cheeks flushed with color. Of course, she said stiffly. We continued the interview for another 20 minutes. I asked pointed questions about strategic planning, client relationship management, and innovation forecasting. Vanessa answered competently, though her earlier confidence had evaporated. As our time drew to a close, I closed her file and looked at her directly. You have impressive credentials, Ms. Wilson. Our team will be evaluating all candidates and making a decision by the end of the week. Do you have any questions for me? Vanessa hesitated, clearly struggling with how to navigate this unexpected power dynamic. Just one, she finally said. Does our family know about all of this? They will soon, I replied. Now that you're aware of my position, I see no reason to continue the charade. I stood, signaling the end of the interview. Vanessa rose uncertainly. Abigail, she said, her voice low and urgent. I hope you won't let personal history influence your professional decision. I'm genuinely qualified for this position. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time in years. Behind her perfect appearance and accomplished resume, I saw something new. Vulnerability. All candidates will be evaluated on their merits, I assured her. Thank you for coming in today. As Rachel appeared to escort Vanessa out, my sister turned back one last time, her expression a complex mixture of emotions I couldn't fully decipher. Congratulations, she said simply. What you've built here is extraordinary. It was possibly the first genuine compliment she'd ever given me. After Vanessa departed, I stood at my window overlooking the city, processing the encounter. 8 years of secret building, of separate lives maintained, had collapsed in a single meeting. By dinner time, my family would know. The carefully constructed walls between Abigail Wilson, family disappointment, and A.W., business titan, had irrevocably fallen. I wasn't entirely sure how I felt about that. The first call came exactly 47 minutes after Vanessa left my office. My mother, her voice tight with a mixture of emotions I couldn't quite identify. Abigail, she said without preamble when I answered. We need to talk. I'm in meetings all afternoon, I replied, which was true. Can we schedule something for later this week? Later this. She broke off, clearly struggling with my business as usual tone. Abigail, Vanessa just told us the most extraordinary thing. She says you're the CEO of AW Corporation, that you founded it, that you're successful. The pause before successful spoke volumes about her disbelief. Yes, I confirmed simply. A long silence followed. I could almost hear her recalibrating years of assumptions about her youngest child. Why didn't you tell us? She finally asked, her voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. Would it have mattered? I countered. Another silence. Your father wants to speak with you. Before I could object, my father's gruff voice came on the line. Abigail, is it true? It's true. The company that took the Nakamura account from us, that was you? Of course, that would be his first concern. Yes. We offered them better technology and more competitive pricing. I heard him exhale sharply. I see. Dad, I have a board meeting in 10 minutes. Can we continue this conversation another time? Your mother is organizing a family dinner tomorrow night. We expect you to attend. It wasn't a request. Despite everything, despite knowing I now possessed more wealth and influence than he ever had, my father was still issuing commands rather than making invitations. I'll check my schedule, I replied neutrally. I'll let you know. I ended the call and took a moment to center myself before my meeting. Jordan appeared in my doorway, concern evident on her face. Everything okay? You look a little pale. Family matters, I explained briefly. The Wilsons now know about AW. Understanding dawned in her eyes. Storm brewing. Category 5 hurricane, I expect. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and decisions, but underneath my professional focus ran a current of anticipation. The carefully maintained separation between my two lives had dissolved, and I wasn't sure what would emerge from the collision. By evening, my phone was flooded with messages. Brandon had texted 3 times, his tone evolving from disbelief to calculation. Vanessa must be confused. What's really going on? Then, just spoke to Walter. It's true, isn't it? You're actually AW? Finally, we should discuss potential synergies between our companies. Call me. Cousins I barely spoke to suddenly remembered my existence. Aunt Patricia, who had dismissed my career for years, left a voicemail gushing about how she'd always known I had potential. Uncle Gerald, the surgeon, sent an email inquiring about investment opportunities. The only message that gave me pause came from Walter. They're in shock, Miss Abigail. But beneath the confusion, I think there's pride too, even if they don't know how to express it yet. I decided to attend the family dinner, if only to address the situation directly and establish new boundaries going forward. I notified my security team, a precaution I hadn't previously needed with my family, and instructed Jordan to clear my evening schedule. The dinner itself was unlike any Wilson family gathering I'd ever attended. For one thing, it was held at the Four Seasons rather than the family estate, neutral territory perhaps. For another, when I entered the private dining room, my typically punctual family was already seated, as if they'd arrived early to prepare themselves. All conversation stopped when I appeared. 7 pairs of eyes turned to me. My parents, Brandon and his wife Olivia, Vanessa and Derek, and to my surprise, Walter, seated at the table rather than serving it. Abigail, my mother rose, uncertainly extending her arms for an embrace. When had she last hugged me? I couldn't remember. I accepted the awkward embrace before taking my seat. The table was silent, the atmosphere thick with unspoken questions. Well, my father finally said, "This is certainly unexpected." Vanessa, seated across from me, hadn't met my eyes since I arrived. Derek, beside her, seemed fascinated by my presence, studying me as if I were a rare specimen. "How did you do it?" Brandon asked abruptly. 8 years, and none of us had any idea. How is that possible? It wasn't difficult, I replied honestly. None of you were particularly interested in my life. The blunt assessment caused my mother to flinch. That's not fair, Abigail, my father protested. We've always supported you. Have you? I asked quietly. When was the last time any of you asked about my work? Not my job, not my position, but the actual work I was doing. No one answered. I never lied, I continued. I told you I started my own company. I told you I worked in software development. I simply omitted the scale of my success because it became clear that nothing I achieved would ever be enough. That's not true, my mother interjected. We've always wanted you to succeed. You wanted me to succeed in ways you recognized, I corrected. Harvard, not State University. Law or medicine, not technology. Working for an established firm, not founding my own company. My father cleared his throat. Well, clearly we were wrong about your capabilities. What you've built is impressive, Abigail. Very impressive indeed. It was possibly the first genuine compliment he'd ever given me, yet it felt hollow after so many years of dismissal. Thank you, I replied simply. I've been looking at your company's performance, Brandon said, his business mind clearly working. Your growth trajectory is remarkable. We should discuss how Wilson Enterprises might align with your operations. Perhaps a joint venture or... Brandon, I interrupted gently. Let's not discuss business tonight. He looked surprised but nodded. The server arrived with the first course, temporarily relieving the tension. As we ate, my mother attempted normal conversation, asking about my life in Chicago, my apartment, whether I was seeing anyone. The questions felt surreal after years of disinterest. After the entrees were served, Vanessa finally spoke directly to me. I owe you an apology, Abigail. Her voice was quiet but clear. The things I said at the reunion and over the years, they were cruel and unfair. The table fell silent again. Vanessa Wilson did not apologize, not to family, not to colleagues, not to anyone. Her perfect life had never required acknowledgement of error.
Thank you, I said.
I appreciate that. I just never thought, she trailed off, that I could be successful? I finished for her. That I could build something significant? That's been the Wilson family narrative about me for as long as I can remember. We were wrong, my father said, the admission clearly difficult for him. Clearly, we underestimated you. The question is, where do we go from here? Asked, looking around the table. My mother reached across to touch my hand, another unusual gesture. We're family, Abigail. We may have misunderstood you, but we've always loved you.
Had they?
In their own way, perhaps. But their love had always been conditional, tied to achievements and external markers of success. I'd like to believe that, I said carefully. But moving forward, I need honesty and respect. I won't return to being the family disappointment when it's convenient. Of course not, my mother assured me quickly. My father cleared his throat again, looking uncomfortable. Abigail, there's something else we should discuss. Wilson Enterprises is facing some challenges. The economic climate, combined with increased competition. Here it was, the real reason for the reconciliation attempt. You're asking for financial help? I stated directly. My father flushed. Not asking exactly. But a strategic partnership could benefit both our companies. The Wilson legacy. Dad, I interrupted. If you want to discuss a business relationship, you'll need to submit a formal proposal through proper channels, just like any other potential partner. His expression hardened. We're not any other potential partner. We're your family. Yes, I agreed. And that's why this conversation is inappropriate. Business and family should remain separate. But you'll consider it, he pressed. I'll consider any sound business proposal, I replied neutrally. The conversation shifted to safer topics as dessert was served. Brandon discussed his children's school achievements. Vanessa mentioned an upcoming vacation. My mother detailed her charity committee's latest fundraising efforts. It was almost like a normal family dinner, except for the undercurrent of recalibration as they adjusted to the new reality of who I was. As coffee was served, my father raised his glass. To Abigail, he said, the most successful Wilson of her generation. The others raised their glasses, murmuring agreement. 8 years ago, such recognition would have meant everything to me. Now it felt oddly hollow, validation coming only after external proof of my worth. After dinner, as we prepared to depart, Vanessa pulled me aside. About the position at your company, she began hesitantly. The hiring committee will make their decision based on qualifications, I told her. I won't interfere either way. She nodded, accepting this. Fair enough. But Abigail, regardless of that decision, I hope we can start to repair our relationship. I've missed having a sister. Had we ever truly been sisters in the meaningful sense? I wasn't sure, but her expression seemed genuine. I'd like that, I said cautiously, but it will take time. Trust isn't rebuilt overnight. In the following weeks, my relationship with my family entered a new, uncertain phase. My father submitted a formal business proposal, which my team evaluated objectively and ultimately declined. The synergies weren't there, and his company's financial instability presented too much risk. Instead, I offered him a consulting position, leveraging his industry contacts while limiting our financial exposure. After initial resistance, he accepted. Vanessa was not selected for the VP position. Our hiring committee found another candidate with more relevant experience, but I did offer her a junior position that aligned with her skills, making it clear she would receive no special treatment. To my surprise, she accepted, expressing determination to prove herself on merit alone. Brandon remained the most difficult. His competitive nature couldn't easily accept that his overlooked little sister had surpassed him professionally. Our interactions remained strained, though civil. My mother made the most genuine efforts to reconnect, calling regularly and asking thoughtful questions about my work and life. During one such call, she said something that stayed with me. I never really saw you, Abigail. I was so focused on what I thought you should be that I missed who you actually were. Throughout this period of family recalibration, I sought advice from those I trusted most: Catherine, my original mentor, Jordan, who had been by my side throughout the company's growth, and Walter, who had witnessed both sides of my divided life. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, Catherine advised. But it can mean freedom, for you, not them. Walter's perspective was similarly measured. Families are complicated, Miss Abigail. People can change, but it happens slowly, and old patterns run deep. As I navigated this new territory, I realized that true success wasn't measured in wealth or power, but in the integrity with which one lived. The little girl desperate for her family's approval had grown into a woman who no longer needed it, but perhaps could now build something more honest with them if they were willing to meet her halfway. 3 months after the revelation of my identity as AW, I hosted a dinner party at my Chicago penthouse apartment. The guest list was small but significant. My parents, Brandon and Olivia, Vanessa and Derek, Walter, Catherine, and Jordan. It marked the first time my family and my closest confidants would meet, a symbolic merging of my previously separate worlds. The penthouse itself represented another kind of revelation for my family. Located on the top floor of a historic building overlooking Millennium Park, it featured floor-to-ceiling windows, museum-quality art, and understated luxury that spoke of success without ostentation. As Walter welcomed my family members and took their coats, I watched their eyes widen as they took in my actual lifestyle for the first time. This is Quite a place, Abigail, my mother said, accepting a glass of champagne from the server. Her gaze lingered on an original Georgia O'Keeffe painting, an artist she had always admired. Thank you, I replied simply. I've made it my home. My father examined the view of the Chicago skyline, the Wilson Innovations headquarters visible in the distance. You can see your building from here, he noted, his tone unreadable. That was intentional, I admitted. I like seeing what I've built. Introductions were made over appetizers. Catherine, elegant in a simple black dress, shook hands firmly with my father. I've been following Abigail's career since she was in my business strategy class, she told him. Her vision was extraordinary even then. Jordan charmed my mother with stories about our company's charitable initiatives. Walter moved comfortably between serving and joining conversations, his unique position as a bridge between my two lives making him an essential presence. By the time we seated ourselves at the dining table, the initial awkwardness had eased somewhat. I had arranged the seating carefully. My father between Catherine and Jordan, my mother between Walter and Brandon, Vanessa directly across from me. As the first course was served, I gently tapped my glass to gain everyone's attention. Thank you all for coming tonight, I began. Having the most important people in my life together in one room means a great deal to me. I paused, gathering my thoughts. For many years, I lived a divided life. Abigail Wilson, the family disappointment, and A.W., the successful entrepreneur. That division ended with Vanessa's job interview, and we've all been adjusting to this new reality since then. My family members shifted slightly in their seats, but no one interrupted. I've given a lot of thought to what happens next, I continued. How we move forward as a family, and whether that's even possible given our history. Of course it's possible, my mother interjected. We're family, I smiled gently. Being family by blood doesn't automatically create true family bonds, Mom. Those have to be built on mutual respect, support, and understanding, things that have been largely absent in our relationship. My father frowned, but remained silent. That said, I believe in second chances, I continued. I'm willing to build a new relationship with each of you, but it needs to be based on who I actually am, not who you wished I would be. I turned to my father. Dad, I've reviewed your consulting work over the past month. Your industry knowledge is valuable, and I'm prepared to offer you a permanent position heading our legacy client division. His eyebrows rose in surprise. I thank you, Abigail. But, I continued, it comes with conditions. This isn't a bailout. You'll report to our COO like any other division head. Your performance will be evaluated by the same metrics we use for everyone. There will be no special treatment because of our relationship. He nodded slowly, a mixture of emotions crossing his face, pride, humility, resignation. I understand. Vanessa, I said, turning to my sister. Your work in the market analysis department has been solid. Your manager speaks highly of your dedication and quick learning. Vanessa straightened slightly. Thank you. I've been trying to prove myself on merit alone. I've noticed, I acknowledged. Continue on this path, and advancement will come naturally. And Brandon, I addressed my brother, who had been watching the exchanges with guarded interest. I know you're facing challenges with your company's technology infrastructure. I'm not in a position to merge our businesses as you suggested, but I am willing to offer consulting services from our tech team to help you modernize your systems. Brandon's expression was complex, gratitude mixed with the difficulty of accepting help from his younger sister. That would be appreciated, he finally said. As for you both, I said to my parents, I'd like to try building a more honest relationship. That means regular communication, respect for my choices and accomplishments, and an understanding that my life and business decisions are my own. My mother nodded eagerly. We want that too, Abigail. We're so proud of what you've accomplished. Even if it wasn't in the way you expected? I asked gently. Especially because it wasn't what we expected, my father replied, surprising me. It's shown us how limited our vision was. The conversation flowed more naturally after that as we enjoyed the excellent meal. Catherine shared stories of my early business ideas. Jordan recounted the chaotic early days of Wilson Innovations. Walter contributed occasional anecdotes from my childhood that revealed a consistent character even then, determined, thoughtful, quietly confident. Later, as dessert was being served, I found myself alone with Vanessa on the balcony. The October evening was cool, but not uncomfortable, the city lights creating a glittering backdrop. "You know," she said after a moment of companionable silence, "I think I've been jealous of you my whole life." I turned to her in surprise. "Jealous? Of me? You are the golden child, Vanessa. Perfect at everything." She smiled wryly. "Perfect at the things our parents valued. But you always knew who you were. Even when everyone was telling you that you were wrong, you stayed true to yourself. I've spent my whole life being who I thought I should be, not who I wanted to be." "It's not too late to change that," I offered. She nodded thoughtfully. "Working at your company has been enlightening. Seeing how you've created a culture that values innovation and authenticity. It's different from anywhere I've worked before." "That was intentional," I told her. "I built the company I wished had existed when I was starting out." "Well, it's working," she said. "And I'm grateful for the chance to be part of it, even in a junior role. To earn my way based on what I can contribute, not my last name." Inside, I could see my parents engaged in animated conversation with Catherine. My father was gesturing enthusiastically about something, looking more alive than I'd seen him in years. My mother was laughing at something Jordan had said, her usual social facade replaced by genuine amusement. Brandon and Walter appeared deep in discussion by the fireplace. "Do you think we can really move past everything?" Vanessa asked, following my gaze. "All the years of, well, you know." "I think we can build something new," I replied carefully. "Different from before, but potentially valuable in its own way. It won't happen overnight." "Nothing worthwhile ever does," she agreed. In the months that followed, we established new family traditions. Monthly dinners rotated between our homes. Holiday celebrations became less formal and more genuine. My father embraced his role at Wilson Innovations with unexpected enthusiasm, his decades of industry experience proving valuable when combined with our innovative approaches. My mother volunteered with our company's educational foundation, helping young women pursue careers in technology. Brandon and I developed a more respectful relationship, though competition remained an undercurrent. Vanessa and I gradually rebuilt a sisterly bond based on adult understanding rather than childhood rivalry. She eventually earned a promotion to senior analyst on her own merits. Walter continued his dual role in my life, a constant reminder of where I'd come from and how far I'd traveled. "I always knew you were exceptional, Miss Abigail," he told me one evening as he prepared to leave after a family dinner. "Even when you were a quiet child with your nose in a book, there was something special about your determination." Perhaps the most meaningful change was in myself. The need for validation that had driven me for so many years, first seeking my family's approval, then proving them wrong, gradually released its hold. Success was no longer about showing my worth to others, but about creating value according to my own standards. A year after Vanessa's fateful job interview, I launched the Wilson Innovation Foundation, focusing on supporting young entrepreneurs from underprivileged backgrounds. The first cohort included 20 young people with promising ideas but limited resources, exactly as I had been, minus the privileged upbringing. At the foundation's opening event, I shared my story publicly for the first time, how I'd built my company in secret, driven partly by determination to prove my worth to a family that couldn't see my potential. The greatest barrier to success is often not external circumstances, but the limitations others place on our vision of ourselves, I told the audience. True success comes not from meeting others' expectations, but from having the courage to define achievement on your own terms. After the speech, a young woman approached me, barely 20, with the same determined expression I recognized from my own mirror years ago. "Do you think it's really possible?" she asked earnestly. "To succeed when everyone expects you to fail?" I smiled, thinking of the journey that had brought me here, from family disappointment to CEO, from seeking validation to offering opportunity. "Not only is it possible," I assured her, But there's a special kind of strength that comes from building success against the odds. The path may be longer and harder, but what you create will truly belong to you. Later that evening, surrounded by my reconciled family and trusted colleagues, I reflected on the complicated journey we'd traveled. The wounds of the past hadn't disappeared completely. They had healed into scars that occasionally ached but no longer limited movement. Success, I had learned, wasn't measured by wealth or recognition, though I had acquired both. True success lay in living authentically, creating value for others, and finding the courage to offer second chances, both to others and to oneself. As I looked around at the faces of those who had witnessed my journey, some from the beginning, others only after the revelation, I recognized that life rarely offers perfect resolutions. Instead, it provides opportunities for growth, forgiveness, and new beginnings. The disappointment that had once defined me had transformed into my greatest strength, the freedom to define success on my own terms and the wisdom to help others do the same. Have you ever had to prove yourself to family members who underestimated you? Drop a comment below sharing your experience. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about overcoming family expectations. Don't forget to share with someone who might need to hear that their worth isn't determined by others' perceptions. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, true success comes from being authentically yourself, not meeting someone else's definition of achievement.